Hey Skeeters, today we're going to be talking about Standard 3A, so let's take a look. 3A states, analyze the effects of diction and imagery, for example, controlling images, figurative language, understatement, overstatement, irony, paradox, in poetry. Okay, so all of these are examples of the imagery or diction, okay, so how you can use the words to put together and create things. And specifically, we're looking at poetry, okay, so how all of those things kind of go together in poetry. So we're figuring out how the use of words, which is diction, and the creation of pictures through words, okay, which is imagery, affects the message of a poem. So we're figuring out how the use of words, diction, and the creation of pictures through words, imagery, affects the message of a poem. Okay? So, figurative language, that is a huge part of imagery. Alright? And so again, imagery is creating those pictures in your writing that readers can see while they're reading. And ways to do that is using figurative language. So, simile, metaphor, imagery is actually a part of figurative language. Assonance and alliteration, those are both repetitions of sounds in words, so poets use that to kind of create a rhythm and create just that continual sound to make a point. Hyperbole, which is like exaggerating something, so I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. You can't really eat a whole horse, nor should you eat a whole horse, or a horse in general. But anyway, hyperbole. Personification. I feel like this is one that a lot of students remember, but personification is giving an inanimate object, okay, a living quality. So, a phone, right? A phone. My phone sprouted legs and ran away, okay? Or AKA it got stolen, maybe, or I lost it, okay? That's the message that is sending, but it kind of gives you a visual of the phone and maybe how it has legs and it just ran away. But phones can't sprout legs. It's just not possible. So giving a human attribute to a non-living thing, okay? So that's figurative language. So let's look at some poems and kind of figure out how that pertains to this standard, okay? Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. So this poem does have some imagery. It's just not very strong. Okay, it doesn't necessarily paint you a picture. You know that roses are red. You know that violets are blue. Okay, that purpley blue color. We all know that sugar is sweet. Okay, but the comparison here is at the end when it says so, and so are you. So those comparisons or those visuals of the roses being red, and then the rhyme scheme, all of those things contribute to the message, which is how sweet someone is. Okay. Another example is one that has stronger. Well, okay. So I forgot to mention this, but you can the imagery in a poem can connect to your senses, the five senses. And there's no limit to that. You just have to be careful whenever you're reading poetry or writing poetry to not look into every single thing. But it does, that imagery and that diction, those words, create the picture and create the vision of the poem. Okay? So, sorry, I missed that part. But another example with a little bit stronger diction and imagery is from the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. Okay, he's one of the older poets that we study, and he uses imagery and diction in his poem to create pictures for his readers. So, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Simile, that's figurative language, using the word as to compare things. I wandered lonely. So it's talking about like when you see someone by themselves, he's comparing them wandering around by themselves, lonely as a cloud. kind of just floating around, no purpose, just kind of there. So it creates that image and gives you that meaning and understanding of how this person is wondering. Okay? Floats on high. So again, just that, the diction, floating. There's a difference between standing and floating. When you're floating, you're just kind of bouncing along, just kind of ho-hum, here I am, kind of relaxed. When you're standing, you're a little more straight up. There's a little bit more of a posture to standing. So he wanted to create this image of kind of how, and it's talking about how the cloud is floating, all right, or the vales in the hills. So wandering lonely, just kind of floating along, kind of relaxing, okay, creates that image. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. So, you know, when you're at a Ranger game or you're at a concert or you're at a football game of some kind, like there's crowds everywhere. There's people just clumped together constantly. You're just, everywhere you turn, you see people. So crowds, all at once I saw this crowd, this group. A host of golden daffodils. So even if you don't know what daffodils are, you can kind of picture just this big group of something, like golden somethings. So even if you don't know what all there is to the words that the author chose, you can still kind of envision it. Daffodils, though, are a flower, is a type of flower. And so creates that vision, that picture. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So describing the daffodils and what they're doing, where they are. So beside the lake is that the location, right? Giving you the vision of a lake, and on the, you know, whichever side you want it to be on, right or left, there's a lake, and then there's a sea of daffodils, right? Beneath the trees, there's trees hanging over this field of flowers, and then fluttering and dancing in the breeze, so just kind of waving back and forth. So again, that's not the whole poem, that's only the first stanza, but I mean, it gives you a very good example of what that imagery and diction can do for the vision of the work, of the text. Imagery and figurative language are super important when you're writing. If there's a way for you to use a different word, go for it. All right. We want you to use words that build a picture so that your reader can see it. When you're reading and trying to interpret, understanding figurative language and kind of where that comes from is super important because it can help you identify the meaning. So figurative language in poetry and imagery and diction and all those things, they're very important. So whenever it comes to this standard, we're going to be practicing it often. So hopefully that'll get better as you practice, just like anything else. But if you have any questions, just let us know. We empower, we impact, we love. We are Skeeter Nation.